Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and as always, so glad to have you along with us as we continue this celebration of the outdoor lifestyle, the history and tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. And we talk about some wildlife issues. We talk about some conservation issues. We wrap up each week's show with some wild game cooking. It's kind of the full picture, the full package, because I think that this history and heritage and tradition is a big deal. I think it's important. I think it's important to our state in general, our state as a whole. There are so many companies here in Michigan that are outdoor related. A lot of people make their living based on outdoor recreation. Plus, we need hunters and anglers and trappers to manage our wildlife populations. You know, it's not like the old days where there was no man here and Mother Nature just kind of figured out her own balance. Well, man is a part of the equation these days, and we need to do our part in managing these populations. But beyond this, beyond the big picture of why I'm so passionate about this, I look at my personal history, my family tradition, the Avery family tradition. I think we're on 5 generations right now that I personally know who are outdoor enthusiasts, bordering on outdoor addicts. My grandpa, he hunted and he fished. He taught my dad, who hunted and fished and trapped. Who taught me, I hunt and fish. Who taught my son, James, he hunts and fish. James taught the grandkids. They hunt and fish. And when we get together, or when we're texting back and forth, that's what we talk about. We don't normally talk about politics. It sneaks in once in a while. We try not to, but it's not politics. It's not the weather, other than how it affects our hunting and fishing passions. But it's the outdoors. And for the first time in my life, I can see a future where that outdoor lifestyle is in jeopardy. In part because of the anti-hunters. They are a vile, evil, lying, well-funded group that want to take away our way of life. But that's not the part that really bothers me, because the hardcore, in-your-face anti-hunters, you can see them. They're right there in front of you. You know where they're coming from. That's the enemy. Okay, I can see him. He's the enemy, he or she. 2 other things that bother me is the infighting in the outdoor community. That one bothers me a lot, because that's the one that's going to get us. If we keep fighting among ourselves, it's going to create an opening for the anti-hunting groups. But the other of this triad here, this trinity that I think about, is the population of people in the southern part of the state. And I'm not saying everybody, because there are a lot of hardcore outdoors men and women in the southern tier of the Lower Peninsula. But that's where the population is. And because that's where the population is, they can control the direction of how the rest of the state goes. And if those folks in the southern part of the state who are ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, they're ignorant to the outdoor lifestyle because they didn't grow up that way and they don't have any experience, if they decide they're going to start voting against us, we're in trouble. So that's the long story about why I do this show and why I'm so passionate to do whatever I can in my little way to promote and preserve this outdoor lifestyle. As I was walking out the door this morning, speaking of the outdoor lifestyle, I walked out the door this morning and it hit me that, okay, as you're hearing this show, now it is officially springtime, but it really hit me as I was walking out the door when I heard the robins chirping. The sun was just starting to come up. I thought, okay, boom, this feels like an early springtime morning. This feels like, in fact, what it felt like to me was heading out to go turkey hunting. Now, turkey season's coming up in, about a month now? Most of the birds, I think, across the state are still flocked up in the big groups, so it's really kind of hard to go out turkey scouting. But what I do like to do is figure out the area where I'm going to be hunting, and I have about 3 options this spring, and just drive around and see where I'm seeing those big flocks. If I don't see big flocks, it makes me a little nervous. If I see big flocks anywhere in the section, it's like, okay, they're going to break up here in a couple of weeks. They're going to disperse, and then they can become, fair game, fair targets to me. But I love turkey hunting. I'm excited about turkey hunting. My grandson Trent, he's not a little kid. He's 23 years old, but he's never turkey hunted. He's a hardcore deer hunter, but he's never turkey hunted. I think we're going to change that this spring. At least that is the plan for now. So turkey season's coming up. Early trolling season is in full swing, at least across the southern part of the state. Speaking of my son James, who's a hardcore hunter and angler, he was out on Saginaw Bay a couple of days ago fishing with Mike Smith of Offshore Account and a couple of other buddies. And man, they got some nice fish. When he sent me the picture, I said, "Are you on Erie, Lake Erie?" Because it looked like because the number of fish and the size of the fish, I thought they must be on Lake Erie. No, they were on Saginaw Bay. Boat launches are in all across the bay. Time to get out there. Let's hope, though, that and walleye are not really directly affected by sea lamprey, but our freshwater, our Great Lakes fishery in general is. You've heard the news about sea lampreys and the fact that there are going to be some 12 positions cut in that program. I've been trying to get some reaction from the feds, the Fish and Wildlife Service, on this, and they won't talk about it. They're so, I don't want to say hinky, but they say things are so precarious right now, they just don't want to say too much of anything. So it's not that it's not on my radar screen, but I'm having a hard time getting anybody to talk about it. I was able to get somebody to talk about those cougar cubs in the UP. If you were with me last week, you heard me say that I had been talking with some folks in the UP who had found those cougar cubs, and they were reluctant to go on the show with me here because they were getting some what they termed as pressure from the DNR. I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but they were uncomfortable going public with that knowledge, even though everybody knew about it. It was all over Facebook. It was all over social media. And I made the prediction last week. I said, I think these people are legit. I think these reports and the pictures I've seen are real. And I made the prediction that by the time you heard the radio show last weekend, the DNR would come out and say, yes, those were cougar cubs. And again, I didn't know if it was cubs or kittens or whatever, but it's both. It can be a cougar cub or a cougar kitten. Anyway, 2 of them were found. So I talked with the DNR biologist who went out and did the investigation. He said, absolutely, those are indeed cougar cubs. More on that after the break as I have a conversation with Brian Roell, who is a DNR wildlife biologist and the guy who was assigned to the case. What else? Our Wednesday Night Live at the Lumberjack Restaurant is coming up April 23rd. Call 989-343-0892 for reservations, 989-343-0892. If you have to leave a message, tell them your name, your phone number, and how many in your party, 989-343-0892. Also on your calendar should be the 2nd annual Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing. Registration is now open. Go to mucc.org/golf, mucc.org/golf. We do have golfers already signing up, and I am pretty confident that we will have a full field for this year's event. And I've got a pretty a pretty aggressive goal for how much I think we can clear on this year's event, but I think we can do it. mucc.org/golf. Okay, coming up on this week's show, as I said after the break, Brian Roell talks about the investigation of those cougar cubs, what that means. Does it mean we now have a breeding population, so we have to have a management plan? Well, Brian will talk about that and more. And then Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council. When I was talking earlier about the folks in the southern part of the state who will control the vote on our outdoor issues, that's what the Michigan Wildlife Council is centered on, reaching those people in the southern part of the state. In our second hour, Jeania Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods will talk about turkey guns, guns in general, the availability of and ammo, and all such things. Then Sergeant Mike Mshar answers this week's Ask Avery question. And in hour number 3, we're going to talk more about walleye trolling on Saginaw Bay with Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters and the LInwood Beach Marina. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire, Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. If you want to reach me, questions, comments, concerns, criticism, pictures, that's how to get them to me. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I think it's going to be a good show this week. Of course, I think they're all going to be a good show this week, right? I think it's going to be a good show. I'm so glad you're with us. I hope you can stick around for the next 3 hours. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WZTK in Alpena. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Battle Creek, WBCK 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee, WTIQ 1450 AM 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the LInwood Beach Marina and Campground, where the docks are in the water, they are launching boats, they are fishing out in front of LInwood Beach, and they are getting nice catches of walleye. Coming up in the third hour of this week's show, Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters, who works out of LInwood Beach Marina, will join me to talk more about this springtime trolling fishery for Saginaw Bay walleye. If you were with me last week, you heard me talking about conversations I was having with some locals in the Ontonagon County who found some cougar cubs. And at the time, and in fact, I'm still confused whether to call them cubs or kittens, they said they found them in a roadway, and they were waiting for a DNR wildlife biologist to come out or to do an investigation and make it formal, make it official. Well, the day after I recorded that conversation, I got a news release from the DNR saying, yes, it is official. We have recognized that we found 2 cougar cubs in the UP. The guy who did that investigation is Brian Roell. He's a DNR wildlife biologist, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Brian, welcome back. How are you?
Oh, good. Glad to be back.
You were indeed the guy who did that investigation. Did you see those cubs?
No, I did not see it. I kind of wish I did, but I was able to look at a number of photographs of them and then actually confirm that actual location. Because unfortunately with cougars, we still get lots of hoax. You know, we'll see pictures that were taken in another state and then represented as being from Michigan, whether it's the Upper Peninsula or even Lower Peninsula. So we always have to do a site investigation and make sure where the pictures originated from. So my investigation of the site and with the eyewitnesses that took the picture, happened to be there a couple of people that just happened to drive by and see these, all allowed me to confirm that indeed these were 2 cougar cubs.
Okay, so they are cubs. They're not kits or kittens?
Actually, you're correct on both terms. Cougar kittens or cubs is used universally. So,
all right. So whatever term comes out of my mouth, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And as long as we're talking terminology, puma, mountain lion, cougar, are they all biologically the same critter?
Yes, all the same thing. There's even more names. There's about a half a dozen plus names.
Okay. All right. So um, these cubs were walking down the side of the road, but no female seen anywhere?
Yeah, so the female was never witnessed. So the eyewitness said he came upon him with his pickup truck, and they were trying to get out of the roadway up the snowbank, but they couldn't able to get up the steep snowbank. So they were that young. When I looked at them and talking with other biologists, we estimated 7 to 9 weeks old, and I confirmed that age with some Western biologists, and they all agree that that's right in the ballpark of what they would be. So fully dependent, obviously, at that age on mom. Possibly mom was crossing the road with them and maybe heard the truck coming, and she had leaped over the bank and the cubs weren't able to get there. So maybe she was right there. But at this time, we cannot confirm that there is an adult with these kittens or cubs. So we're still hoping to get that trail cam picture that would actually cement that we did indeed have reproduction in the Upper Peninsula.
So what you're hoping then is that with your network and private citizens network of trail cameras across the UP, somebody's going to get a picture of a female with these two cubs.
I sure hope so. That, and that would really be the historic event, because right now, if we can confirm this, that would be certainly the reproduction confirmed east of the Mississippi, first time in 100 plus years. Then it may even be east of the Missouri River as well. So, because Wisconsin and Minnesota have not confirmed reproduction. You kind of think Minnesota would, because they're right next to the source population in the Dakotas and Nebraska, but so far, no, they have not. But that doesn't mean it hasn't happened unconfirmed in those states, or even unconfirmed in the Upper Peninsula, for that matter.
Brian, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a scientist, but I mean, you've got cougars in that area. They've been documented. Now it's documented there are two cubs that were there. Doesn't that prove we got a breeding population?
Well, with the gestation period, so we got really two terms. We got breeding and reproduction. Breeding is implying that she was bred here in the Upper Peninsula. That we have no way of knowing. With a 3-month gestation period, she could have bred in one of the other states. And so that I'm not expecting to be able to confirm, at least with the knowledge we have so far on cougars here in Michigan. Now, reproduction, yes, you can infer that more than likely is the case, that she was here, but I cannot 100%, put that down in a report that there is no other way that they got here, because we just don't know. So hopefully, and I'm really hoping to get that picture of mom and two kittens in tow. That would be basically the nail that lets me know that yes, indeed, we had reproduction in the state of Michigan, which is, like I said, is historic because it hasn't happened since the late 1800s.
In the past, the department has always used a term that stuck out in my mind that, yeah, we have an incidental, we've got some cats around, but we don't have a breeding population. If it is proven that there is indeed a breeding population, does that change things? Does it change the status? Does it change a management plan in any way?
No, it does not. I often hear that too, and I've heard it thrown in our face. That's why we don't recognize them. That's false, simply false. We've been recognizing mountain lions in the state of Michigan as far back as 2004, I think was our first confirmation with some hair off of a bumper, actually. But then since that point, we've been able to confirm 133 different observations, either through trail cam pictures, tracks, some videos, different things like that. So it doesn't represent 133 different cats, but because we do know single cats can show up on multiple cameras because the sheer number of cameras out there is astronomical now. The price point of trail cameras has come way down. Used to be kind of rare that somebody even owned one. Now it's kind of rare that they don't own more than one.
Yeah.
Some guys own, 30 of them. So when you start talking about a population of cats in Michigan, we're just not there. So if I can get a picture of mom and the 2 kittens, great. That confirms reproduction, but all that really confirms then is we have 3 in the state of Michigan, nothing more than that. So you really that's really individuals, not a population. Certainly nothing that's viable on that front. And you really have to know more if you're going to start talking a management plan. And there's lots of species in the state of Michigan that we don't have management plans for. I mean, we don't have a management plan for bobcats or fishers. We don't have a management plan for moose. So there's really a lot more that goes into a management plan than just having a couple individuals around. So it really changes nothing. They're an endangered species in Michigan already, so they're already classified in the state of Michigan. So really nothing else would happen on that front.
I hear anecdotal comments from people all the time in the lower peninsula say, "Oh yeah, we've seen cougars," and I question them on this because I'm not sold on this. But these people I talk to seem to be very legitimate. They seem to be very passionate about the story, and they will tell me, "Mike, I'm telling you," and they'll describe the cat and they'll say, "I have seen one of these out in the middle of nowhere, the Deadstream Swamp or wherever." But there was documented up by the Sleeping Bear Dunes a few years ago, wasn't there? Other than that, is there any proof?
No, there was no documentation of Sleeping Bear Dunes.
Oh, there was not?
No. Of those 133 documentation cats, only one of them has come from the Lower Peninsula, and I'm pretty suspect on that one myself. We kind of got forced into confirmation on it, but I have a pretty good hunch that animal was a taxidermy mount that was set out on the roadside. When I look at our eyes in the field, there is over 7,500 records submitted to us. And of those, I've broke it down by county. Oakland County has submitted the most cougar observations of any county. So I think it's more population driven than actual cats.
Wow, that is interesting. Is there I hear often that the department has an agenda when it comes to these top tier predators like wolves and cougars. I mean, it's not fair for me to ask this, but I'm going to. Is there such a thing? How do you guys look at these populations?
Right now, they're just a unique species. This is just a unique species that does exist, is native to Michigan, but there's no agenda. There's no goal. That's one of the things you would actually need before you start talking a management plan is, what do the citizens of Michigan want for mountain lions or cougars in the Upper Peninsula or wherever they may live in the state of Michigan? That none of that has ever been set. That's kind of one of the first steps if you're going to start talking management plan is you need to have a goal.
Brian, I got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. You've been with me before. You know how this works. Can you stick around for a second segment? And I'd like to, if we can, expand this conversation a little bit to wolves. All right, we're talking with Brian Roell, who is a DNR wildlife biologist for the Michigan DNR. He is in an interesting position. I mean, he's got a lot of things under his jurisdiction, purview, whatever term you want to use, but they include mountain lions. They include wolves. How would you like to be the guy who was kind of overseeing the investigation or the work on wolves here in Michigan? It's like Chad Stewart, the guy who was in charge of the deer herd. Some of these jobs are very thankless jobs, and people want to find fault with everything you do. And of course, because humans are involved in wildlife management, humans do sometimes make mistakes. Mistakes can be made, but I don't think the overall criticism is warranted. Anyway, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Brian about wolves in Michigan's UP and maybe the lower as well. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show in Holland on WHTC. That's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Marquette, WGDMJ 1320 AM. Also in Lansing, WILS, also 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. You know, down in my part of the state, in the central part of the lower peninsula, we're not quite turning dirt yet, but frost seeding has been going on for a while. Rich Krazan of Killer Food Plots does a great job. He's my go-to resource, the website killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. And I will have Rich on the show here in the next few weeks, once again, to talk more about this whole concept of putting in food plots and what exactly is involved in that. In the meantime, though, we're talking with DNR wildlife biologist Brian Roell. He's in the UP. We were talking in the first segment about cougars. Brian, another topic that gets just a ton of interest is our wolf population in the UP. We were talking trail cameras earlier. You've got a network of these things across the UP looking, I think specifically for wolves at this point, right?
We do that. We're doing a wolf abundance estimator using trail cameras. So it's a modeling, it's an occupancy model. So we have roughly a little over 1,200 cameras out there. And right now we got students at MSU going through the pictures, but we got to classify like 6 million plus pictures. So it's going to take us a little time. But the beauty of these cameras, we know the technique works, is not only will it help us with wolves, we can probably get a deer estimate. We might be able to estimate even bears. We'll certainly get range of moose, maybe even some of our more cryptic fur bearers like marten and fisher. So it'll have a wide range of use other than just wolves.
What is the latest population number, and how long ago was that data collected? What numbers are you using these days?
So 2024 was, now you put me on the spot. It's 700 and I want to say 62, but I could be off by a couple there, but somewhere right around in there. But really, our wolf population has not changed in the last 14 years. If you look at the confidence levels, intervals on that, they've really stayed somewhere around that 600-700 number for the last 14 years. They basically are occupying all the suitable habitat there is in the Upper Peninsula.
Is that number 600 to 700? Is that a good number in your opinion? Is that too many? How do you see it?
Well, that's not for me to decide. For one thing, that's the Citizens of Michigan plan. That's why we address that in our plan. But really what we've done in our wolf management plan is we don't have an upper ceiling or anything like that. We're going to let wolves figure out where the number of wolves should be. But what we do want to mitigate is those negative things, particularly livestock depredation, pet depredation, wolves showing up in yards, whatever it may be that's being negatively caused. Those are the things we want to mitigate. Where that wolf population falls out, that part doesn't really matter. I mean, to put it in a nutshell, if we had 10 wolves in the Upper Peninsula and we have lots of livestock depredation and wolves showing up and causing problems, that's too many. But if we got 1,000 and you're not seeing a lot of depredation or wolves causing problems, does it really matter? So that's kind of what the tact we've taken in our wolf management plan. And ironically, the other two states, Minnesota and Wisconsin, have now followed suit as well. It's one of the reasons our management plan was always said to be one of the best ones in the country, is that we didn't put a cap.
Is there a wolf hunt in the wings standing by if the feds would approve it?
No, there is not. So, people always tell me that, well, why aren't you getting all ready? Because the fact of the matter is the DNR cannot make that decision. We do not have that authority. The only people in the state of Michigan that have that authority is the Natural Resources Commission, or legislatively they could do that. The DNR itself, so Brian can't start designing a wolf management plan around a hunt until I am given that direction.
does the department have a position on this? Would you like to see a hunt?
That's not for me to decide, and everybody wants to say that, and both sides are incorrect. They'll use science incorrectly. They kind of wield it like it's some magic sword. So the DNR is not going to tell you whether we can hunt. Science doesn't say whether you can hunt. But if you ask me, can we sustainably, biologically harvest wolves? Yes, science can support that. I can support that. But if you tell me we need to hunt wolves to decrease depredation on white-tailed deer, science isn't going to support that. Or we need to have a hunt to lower depredation on livestock. Science isn't going to support that. So my job is to stick to the science. And obviously you're very familiar with Proposal G. So if you're going to wield Proposal G and say those things, you need to use the science correctly.
Brian, and of course that counts, Proposal G, sound scientific wildlife management. Brian, it's always a pleasure. It's always interesting talking with you. I hope that somebody sends you, or you see posted on social media here in the next couple of weeks, pictures of that big cat with those two cubs. That would be very interesting.
I sure hope so. I am very hopeful.
All right, Brian, listen, thanks for talking with me. I appreciate your time, and you and I will check in again soon if you don't mind.
No problem. Anytime.
All right, Brian Roell, DNR wildlife biologist for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. The website, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break. More coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX, and you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on WKNW 1400 AM. Well, I was talking earlier about how I personally am committed to trying to do what little I can to ensure that this outdoor lifestyle continues on for future generations. There are groups, obviously, in this state who are also committed to that, MUCC being one, the other being the Michigan, among others, the Michigan Wildlife Council, and their Here for Generations campaign. Nick Buggia is the president, the chairman of this group, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm good. I mean, it's springtime now. Mother Nature wants it to be springtime. Avery wants it to be springtime. And a lot of people across the state do as well. Although our friends in the UP, they're saying, what are you talking about? We still got snow on the ground. How's it going in your world, Nick?
Good. Just kind of like you mentioned, it's almost springtime. So that's kind of the time of year we try to highlight all the great fisheries we have here in Michigan, and all the great things anglers do for the Michigan economy and Michigan wildlife.
Nick, you are involved in wildlife and hunting and conservation issues from several different perspectives. You wear several hats.
I do.
Why? What? No, I just want to know why you have this passion for this.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's important. It's something that, I'm not only looking for opportunities to kind of give back, but I guess growing up, I spent a lot of time in the outdoors. That's kind of where we connected with family. It's where I go to relax. And I just want to share that with other people and ensure it's here for other people to enjoy.
And the Michigan Wildlife Council and the Here for Generations campaign is kind of targeting people who don't have that background, the way they were brought up, right?
Yeah, yep, that's correct. We focus on the general public, non-hunting and angling folks.
In the southern part of the state for the most part. Why is that?
Well, that's not only where the majority of the population is, but it's also where we've kind of realized the least understanding of hunting and angling is. And so we're focusing there to try to help the folks in that area really understand the benefits of hunting and fishing, that it really helps everybody, not just hunters and anglers, but it ensures that, we have clean water and sustainable wildlife. And if you want to go walking around and enjoy the outdoors, it's probably funded by a hunter and angler.
You've done a lot of research. You, being the Michigan Wildlife Council, have done a lot of research over the last couple of years on how effective this message is, and are people hearing it? What are you finding out, Nick?
Yeah, so we have had our annual study come back, and the numbers are good in Michigan. Nationally, we're seeing a declining understanding and participation in hunting and angling. Michigan is holding steady, and so we'd like to think we've played some part in that, and we're really focusing on next month we kind of have a meeting. We're going to revamp the campaign, and we really hope that kind of takes it to the next level and impacts that non-hunting and fishing public, and really kind of catches their attention and gets them to the next level of understanding.
What does the next part of this campaign look like? Have you gotten that far?
No, that's kind of what we're deciding next month. So it's an exciting time. I think it's going to look a lot different. The messaging, will be very similar, but the look of it, I think, is going to be a lot different.
The Michigan Wildlife Council, if I remember right, is one of only two in the country. I think Colorado is the other. Do you get people from across the country coming to you guys at the Michigan Wildlife Council and saying, "Look, how do you do this? We'd like to do something similar"?
Not as much as I'd like, but we do. We haven't seen. I think that's increased lately. I think people are starting. They're looking at Colorado. They're looking at Michigan. They're looking at the successes we've had. They're looking at our numbers and saying, "Hey, you guys aren't dropping," and why is that? And so, we have had a lot of conservation groups reach out lately. We've had a lot of different, state fish and wildlife agencies or legislators reach out and just kind of wondering what exactly the Wildlife Council is, what we do. They're trying to understand it, and hopefully they try to emulate it.
Isn't that interesting that in today's world, if you're not losing, you're actually gaining? Nick, keep up the good work. We'll talk again. Nick Buggia, the chairman of the Michigan Wildlife Council, the website here for mioutdoors.org, here for mioutdoors.org. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our second hour, Jeania Canel, she is the longtime manager of the gun department of Jay's Sporting Goods, their Clare location. We'll talk about turkey guns, patterning turkey guns, turkey ammo, and more. And then Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR. He's around for the Ask Avery segment, but I asked him to come on a little bit early, so we'll talk about, we'll talk with Mike and more. And then in our third hour, springtime trolling on Saginaw Bay and wild game chef Dixie Dave Minar.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. And you know what? I say this every week, and I truly believe it. The best way to listen to the show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. There you get your local news and weather and sports, and even your local commercials. I call them spots. Maybe there's a sale or some kind of promotion that you want to take advantage of. But if you can't hear all 3 hours of the show, or if you, God forbid, live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast footprint, the broadcast signal, isn't it nice to know that as a backup, there is a podcast version of the show? Where do you hear that? And by the way, the podcast is exactly the same content as the broadcast version of the radio show. It's just made available somewhere else. Well, where do you hear it? You hear it on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page. And then it's everywhere else. Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple Music, the whole nine yards. iHeart, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, yada, yada, yada. Even on YouTube, you can hear the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I do love podcasting, though. I don't, I'm not besmirching or minimizing that way of communication, because it is indeed a viable option these days. And each month, I do podcasts for a couple of my broadcast partners, my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle and Angler Quest Pontoons. In fact, when we're done here in the studio, we will record this month's this month's Angler Quest podcast with a good friend of mine, Scott Hand. In fact, he bought one of my old Angler Quest pontoons. He won the first Angler Quest owner's tourney. He's getting ready to splash his Angler Quest, and we will talk about the Walleye for Warriors project that he is involved in as well. Regardless of how you hear my voice, when you hear my voice, I do certainly appreciate it. I was telling you earlier, I'm starting to get geeked about the upcoming turkey season, especially this year, because it looks like this year I'm going to take my grandson Trent out and show him a little bit about turkey hunting. Trent will more than likely have a shotgun in his hands. We talked about this. I said, look at Trent. Your first bird is hard enough to kill. Don't make it harder on yourself by using a bow or whatever. I will have a bow in my hand, probably a crossbow. I've killed birds with a crossbow, a recurve, and a compound. But Trent, stick with a shotgun. I remember when I first started hunting birds, and there was one season in particular. I called a bird in, I got a shot at him, I hit him, and I rolled him over. I thought, okay, well, that's not right. It's not good, but I'll try it again. 2 days later, different property, called another bird in, hit him, and rolled him over. I said, okay, it's time for a new gun. I'm not convinced the gun was at fault, but when in doubt, it's time for a new gun. And where did I go? I went to see my friends at Jay's Sporting Goods in Clare, and I talked to Jeania Canel. She's been the manager of the gun department at Jay's in Clare for many, many years, and she's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Jeania, how often do you hear that? Well, I made a mistake. It's time for a new gun.
Often enough.
Have you said that yourself over the years, too?
I would probably say yes, probably more so in the black powder line. I've probably switched those up more than I have my actual rifle that I use for deer season. So, yeah, I'd be in that category with you, Mike.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how Jay's has survived for so many years. It's time for a new gun.
Yep.
So, Jeania, let's talk about you for a minute. How did you end up working at Jay's in this position?
Well, I was getting ready to graduate high school and needed a job, so Jay hired me in '85, and I worked at the old building downtown and then continued on out here when we moved to where we are now, and just progressively, I guess, worked my way into different positions. The old store, I swept the parking lot. I filled the pop machines, cleaned the bathroom. And when we come out here, I was a buyer for a short time for the gun department, and then went into managing the department. So
I guess I didn't remember that. You actually go back to the original, the old blue store in Clare. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Lots changed over the years, Jeania.
It has. Yes, it has.
I mean, the world has changed. You and I have changed. Hunting has changed. What about the guns themselves? Have they actually changed over the years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, back when I first started, wood stock was what people wanted. They wanted the most beautiful piece of wood they could get. They wanted just something that just stood out, and they'd take it out in the woods with them. And then, you gradually see that kind of trend go into synthetic. And now one of the biggest things for me is all of the different calibers there are in centerfire rifles. It just blows my mind how many options you have. So, yeah, absolutely, things have changed over the course of the years.
So if it's hard for you, and this is your job to keep track of what's out there these days, imagine those of us just out there in the field. It can be a little overwhelming, Jeania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. And that's where doing your homework comes in. And thank goodness I have good staff that they shoot. Some of them shoot way more than I do. And I'm thankful for the opportunities that they get to go do that. And they do a lot of research. We get a lot of training. We get a lot of reps coming in and showing us the new products and going over that with us. So that's definitely key for us to stay up on things. But I find when I get older, my attention span and what I can retain isn't like it used to be. So I lean on some of these younger guys to, to help fill that void for me. So, but there's a lot. I mean, you start talking ballistics and, people now are wanting to shoot 500, 800, 1,000 plus yards,
yeah.
And what calibers can do that. And what, it can be a little overwhelming. It can be intriguing to say that as well. But not everybody's in the same categories. You still have your true hunters they just want to go out, they want to shoot a deer, and be satisfied. And you have others that are going on, out west hunts and are looking to do those long range things. So definitely there's something to fit everybody's category.
And I've always said that's one of the things that I love about this outdoor lifestyle, whether it's hunting or fishing. It's what you make of it. You can be as basic or down to earth or as simple as you want, or you can take it to whatever level. And that's, we can all enjoy it to whatever level we want.
That's right. Yep, that's exactly right. You have some of those diehards that they're not going to move off of the 30-06. That's all they're going to want. They're not going to change anything. They're still using the same gun they used 20 years ago, and that's okay.
In fact, it's kind of cool, isn't it, that we can use a gun that our parents or grandparents used, and it still works today.
Absolutely. Lots of memories built behind that. So that's wonderful to see.
Yeah, and what else is there in the outdoors that lasts as long as a gun? Fishing rods do if you take care of them, but they tend to break over the years. But a gun's going to be just like it was when you bought it years ago or were given it years ago.
Yep, as long as you take care of it and maintain it the way you should, absolutely.
That's the key then, Jeania, just taking care of it?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you have good storage on them, that you're cleaning them periodically, even if you're not using them. A gun can rust depending on how it's stored, humidity, that type of thing. So if you're doing your due diligence and getting it out and wiping it down, taking it down, cleaning it, they bring them in here. We'll do that service for them too. But you got to make sure that you're getting it out of the safe or the back of the closet, wherever people store them, and going through them and making sure that you're checking them over periodically.
But I think that's part of the fun. That's part of the experience, is that relationship with that gun. Yeah, you're using it out in the field, but then when you bring it back home, you're taking care of it. And you can remember the days out in the field. Jeania, hang tight. You and I could talk about things like this forever. But I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. We're talking with Jeania Canel, the manager of the gun department at Jay's Clare store, the original outdoor superstore. When we come back, I think we'll maybe turn the conversation a little bit more towards turkey guns and turkey season. What are we looking for in a turkey gun these days? And what are we looking for? Ammo and patterning that gun. Look, you don't want to get out there and do what I did, roll that bird. You want to knock that bird down. Well, we'll talk more about that with Jeania Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods. Their website is jsportinggoods.com, jsportinggoods.com, by the way. And after the conversation with Jeania, I'll bring in Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR to talk about turkey season and answer this week's Ask Avery question as well. So there's a lot coming up yet this week here in hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. Stick around. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold WCBY. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Ludington, News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine, all right, I'm going to say no more, right? Okay. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just pulled it out of my pocket, but guess what? Check this sound out. I don't know if you can hear the difference. Aha, you can hear the difference. That is my newest Rapid River knife. It's a Uper Junior. It's just a little bit smaller than the original Rapid River knife, and I've got that one, in my pocket as well. So my Rapid River knife collection continues to grow. Why do I like Rapid River knives? Because they're custom made. They're handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. If you go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, that's rapidriverknifeworks.com, you'll see what I mean. I use the promo code Avery10 to get 10% off your Rapid River knife. Or better yet, you know what? Just go to their store on US 2, just east of Rapid River, and check it out. There you can use the promo code Avery10 as well. And guess what? You can also get Rapid River knives at Jay's Sporting Goods, and they will honor that same Avery10 promo code. How cool is that? And I bring up Jay's because right now we're talking with Jeania Canel, who is the manager of the gun department at Jay's Clare store. The website for Jay's is jsportinggoods.com. It's jsportinggoods.com. And I wanted to talk with Jeania to kind of help us get ready for turkey season. And Jeania, when somebody comes in to look at a turkey gun, has that evolved over the years? I remember when I came in to get my turkey shotgun, it was an 835 Ultimate. But things have changed over the years, haven't they? Or is that gun that I bought years ago still a good option as a turkey gun?
It's still a good option for a turkey gun, Mike. Things do change over the years, and manufacturers will make specific guns that they call turkey guns. A lot of that will be your type of stock. Turkey guns are usually camouflaged. They're going to have a shorter barrel. Turkeys have great eyesight, so the less movement, the better. They'll put an extended turkey tube in it, and those are interchangeable, so you can use it for other options if you wanted, but set up as a turkey, it's going to typically have a turkey tube in it. Some of them now will come with a holographic sight on it. If it comes with just plain sights, it's going to come with a fiber optic of some kind. Some of them will have ghost ring sights on them. So, yeah, there are guns specifically set up and manufactured to be called a turkey gun.
That gun that I bought is a 12 gauge, and I think probably most turkey hunters use a 12 gauge, but that's kind of changing too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because you're getting the youth more involved and ladies more involved, and 12 gauge, can be a little brutal at times, and depending on the ammo you're using, that can add some recoil to it too. So there are actual turkey guns in the 20 gauge and the 410 now.
That 410, that one gets my attention. That little old 410 can actually take down a bird.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right ammo and the right choke tube, and get behind that gun and pattern it. Absolutely.
That's
Your yardages are going to be a little closer with your 20 and your 410 versus your 12. But like I say, if you get out there and pattern that gun, then you'll know what you're capable of doing as far as yardages go.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it boils down to, right? It's the gun, it's the choke tube, it's the ammo, it's the patterning, it's the whole picture.
Yep, absolutely.
I am impressed, though, with how far some people will take, say, the good old-fashioned 12-gauge, how far out they will take that and be effective on a turkey. It's pretty impressive how far out people can stretch it.
Yeah, we were talking the other day at the counter, me and one of my associates, and we were just having conversation about it, and he said some of the people that come in here and tell them the yardages that they take turkeys at, 60 plus yards, and they've done well. And he said, but for me, 50 and below. I said,
Yeah.
well, I'm probably right there in that category with you, because I wouldn't want to wound something and not retrieve it, so
No.
you just need to be confident in what you're doing.
And we'll make this comment for primarily the beginning hunters. When you are turkey hunting with a gun, you're not looking for a body shot, are you? You're looking for a very specific spot on that bird's body, and it's not the body.
Yep. Nope. It's the neck, the head. That's where you want to be in that area.
So then, we talk about patterning, and I hear about patterning a turkey gun all the time. What's involved in that, Jeania?
Mm-hmm. Well, number one, you want to get yourself a target, if you can, that has the turkey head and the kill spot that you're aiming for. And when you're shooting that, in the ammo that you're using, you're going to see how many pellets are in that shot when it hits the target. And that's what you're looking for, the number of pellets that are in your kill zone. So whether you need to change out your choke tube to get that pattern tighter, whether you need to maybe change your ammo a bit, but several things work together to make that kill zone what you want it to be.
And you had said that in general, a turkey choke is pretty tight, right?
Yes. If it's considered full, extra full is very restricted.
Can you actually over choke? Can you get so tight that the pellets are actually going to spread more than you want?
I don't think in most cases you will, but every gun is different. So there is always that possibility that your gun might like a certain choke and a certain ammo differently than what my gun might like. And we might have, two identical guns and we're side by side at the bench. Or, I might have a Benelli and you might be shooting a Beretta, whatever. But yes, guns shoot differently. So if you're not getting what you want, maybe change your choke tube. Maybe the choke tube you're using is what came with it in the factory and you want to try, a Carlson or an Avian choke tube. Maybe that'll make a difference for you. They specialize in chokes. They're not specialized in guns. They're specialized in chokes. Same thing with ammo. Ammo can make a huge difference. So don't give up. Change up your combination of what you're doing and go back to the range. But yeah.
When I first realized that it was the individual gun. It's not the brand, it's not the make, it's the individual gun. You have to find out what that gun actually wants. And that kind of opened my eyes when I actually finally realized that, Jeania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that happens across the board, not in just what we're talking about here, but in your center fires, in your pistols, that's true with all of that. Black powder as well. There are so many things that can change your trajectory. So you just gotta spend time behind your firearm.
And that's the key, right? You got to spend time behind that gun, and that should be the goal. Mm-hmm. That's part of the process. That's actually, part of the fun process before the season, getting ready for the season. But it can be expensive. Turkey loads these days are not cheap.
No, No, and we just got some new stuff in this year. Some Winchester. They came out with a new tungsten load, and that's 5 rounds for $77.99. So it's going to be expensive once you.
I got to go back to that. 5 rounds for how much?
It was $77.99.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
So you want to know what you're doing before you start shooting that stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you want to get close before you start dialing it into that extent.
Yes, absolutely. And you don't have to go to that extreme of ammo either. Don't let anything scare you away from trying a new adventure and getting out there and go turkey hunting. When I went, I did not use anything of that nature. I just used a round that was, compatible to my 12 gauge and the 3-inch, and I patterned it and I did well. So you don't have to go to those extremes to be able to go out there and enjoy that.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point. If you want to get a new turkey gun, God bless you, go get one. But there's probably a gun you got at the house that if you tweak it, you could make it work perfectly fine for turkey season.
Yes, absolutely. There's aftermarket choke tubes. And most guns nowadays have the ability, the mobile choke tubes are called. So your gun is threaded that you can change them out. And there's aftermarket choke tubes, like I spoke, that Carlson Avian, they make those especially, that's their specialty. So you could come in and buy just a turkey tube. You could use an extra full or a full, but pattern that gun and see. But you do not have to go to huge extremes to make a gun you have now work for that process.
What about availability? Right. I mean, the days of COVID are behind us. Right. Hopefully, can we get what we're looking for these days as far as ammo, Jeania?
Yeah, absolutely. We went through 2024 deer season pretty much flawlessly. I mean, there's always going to be something we don't have, and some of it is something that somebody doesn't want to sway away from, and they've been using it for years, and maybe it's just not made anymore or harder to get. So you do run into some of that, but for the most part, turkey season, if you come in here, I am almost certain we're going to have what you want. Excuse me. Our shelves look good. So
excellent.
Yeah, that point of where it was hit or miss is that's behind us, I feel.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. So, Jeania, I would encourage folks to stop in to the gun department at Jay's Sporting Goods in Clare or Gaylord. Shoot the breeze with the folks behind the counter. And if you see Jeania back there, tell her you heard her here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. And Jeania, you and I will talk again. You can count on it.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Jeania Canel of Jay's Sporting Goods. Jeania's one of the good ones, right? She's a good person. I've known her for a long, long time. She's one of the good people. JaySportingGoods.com is the website, JaySportingGoods.com. Stop in there or check them out online. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR. I've kind of got, Mike hanging around for the Ask Avery segment, but I said, hey, Mike, as long as you're available, can you come in a little bit early? And he said, yeah. And I said, look, let's shoot the breeze. Let's see what's on your mind. And he is more than happy to do that. And I appreciate that. So that's coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including the Twister 92.1 WTWS in Houghton Lake. You can also hear us in Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. Let's see if we can go north of the bridge one more time. Yeah, I think we can. Let's go to Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different expensive sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set that is warm, weatherproof, windproof, wind resistant? And if you need, big sizes, I'm talking 4, 5, 6X, the folks at VersaSkins can help you out. There aren't many companies that can do that. Also, if you are a saddle hunter, if you're I got an email from a guy one time. He says, Mike, you know what? When you used to talk about saddle hunting, I thought you meant somebody hunting from the back of a horse on a saddle. No, saddle hunting from a tree skin. VersaSkins can help you out there as well. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Or go to Amazon.com and do a search for VersaSkins brand, and you'll see what I mean. VersaSkins, just change your skin for the season you're in. And you know what? The season we're in right now is a transitional season. It's springtime, right? And there are a lot of things going on in the outdoors. Coming up here, after the next break, it will be the Ask Avery segment. And Sergeant Mike Mshar is all lined up to answer that. But I thought, you know what, Sarge, as long as you're going to be on, can you come in a little bit early and let's shoot the breeze? And he said, absolutely. And I appreciate that. Sarge, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you very much.
Don't call me sir. That always makes me nervous, all right? I'll call you Mike. If you don't mind, you call me Mike. Are we good?
Sounds good, Mike.
All right, Mike, I appreciate that. So listen, in your world these days, what is going on? You're in transition. Your guys, your people are in transition as well. So what is going on in the world of a Michigan conservation officer right now?
There's a lot going on. Obviously, you're right on the money. We're in between weather. So we're going from 70 degree one day to 17 degree the next day. So there's definitely a lot of changes. You know, most people are off the ice. I say most because there's a few people still going out, but we've got open water fishing going on. So there's a lot of, like in between stuff. And, there's a lot of things to remember this time of the spring too, because everybody gets that little bit of an itch to go out there and get on the water.
Yeah, and well, also too, we're looking at new licenses as well this time of year. How close do you keep an eye on that type of thing? Is there leeway, or okay, no, the season starts, you got to have a new license at this particular date?
It really depends, on the situation. Yeah, I mean, obviously, March 31st is the last day for your fishing license, and every situation is different, right? Mm-hmm. Have you forgotten? Probably. Have I forgotten? Sure, I have. But I tell you, there's some really good stuff that the DNR has to help you out. There's an auto renew program. So, and that's something I use, and I don't know if you do, but I do the hunt fish combo, and I have it set up auto renew. So every year, boom, it's done. And I don't even have to go on the computer. I don't have to stop at a store. I know my license is all set.
Yeah, actually,
so
I have taken advantage of that. Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's the way to go. I get the hunt fish combo, boom, everything is there just like you said. What about, and I'm glad you brought this up, what about carrying a license in your pocket these days? Do we have to do that, or is the app, is our phone enough if we get checked?
Yeah, so you got to have it available. The law says that you got to have it on your person when you're out. So if you've got it on your phone, absolutely. That's kind of an area that we're starting to go more and more towards, and we may see that coming in the future with actual tags, hunting tags that are just going to be on your phone, an e-check type of system. But yeah, if you've got it on your phone and you've got it available, I always caution people, I'm like, electronics die. So it's not a bad idea to just have that copy in your wallet or in your, tackle box. But yeah, a lot of people people hand me their phone all the time. Say, hey, here's my license.
Okay. So
no problem with that.
I appreciate that. As far as seasons coming up, we got turkey season coming up around the corner. What do you like people to keep in mind for that season coming up, Sarge?
With turkey season, the biggest thing is just remember, I know a lot of people feed turkeys. They'll use those Wild Turkey Federation feeders. And just remember that, you can't hunt over a feeder. That's one of the things we run into a lot is people forget about that. And then they put a feeder out during the winter, they leave it out and then they hunt over it. And just be prepared, be safe. Turkey's one of those ones where we do end up with some accidents. So know your target before you pull the trigger. Do your scouting way ahead of time and get permission. That's another one is we get a lot of trespass with turkey hunting. So go knock on doors right now. If you're planning on hunting in April, go knock on some doors and get permission before you go.
What does that permission have to look like? Do we have to have something in writing on us?
Nope, you don't. There's nothing in the law that says you have to have it in writing. I always suggest to people get that landowner's number. And so if you do run into a situation where somebody questions you, you can quick, dial them up and say, hey, I got permission. If you want to get it in writing, that's great, but you don't have to have it in writing. Yeah,
and like you say, it's a lot better to have this all figured out ahead of the season, ahead of time, before before the last minute, you get excited, you forget about it, and then you get yourself in trouble. So, yeah, think about it ahead of time.
Yeah, and the worst thing you can do is show up on somebody's door opening day in full camouflage, asking for permission. Most of them are going to tell you no.
Heck, good point. Good point. Hey, Sarge, hang tight. We got to take a break here. We're talking with Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery question, and I suspect we'll have time to talk about some other things as well with Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT 600 AM, 93.5 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And just a quick aside, the folks at Security Credit Union have stepped up, and they will be a major sponsor of the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors charity golf outing to benefit MUCC's youth camp coming up in July. So thank you very much to Security Credit Union. You know this by now, but the way this all works is you can get involved in the content of the show. You can ask me a question. It may be something you want me to answer directly or something you want me to pass along to the powers that be. The best way to get those to me is to send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, and that's exactly what Scott Ankerson did. He sent me an email. He said, Mike, if I understand correctly, you can collect stones along the Lake Michigan shoreline if you stay in the water. Can you do the same on inland lakes? For example, approach the shoreline in a kayak, get out of it while you are in the water, but stay in the water while you are collecting those stones. Can you do that? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I know people who do. And in this case, it's Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR. Mike, again, I appreciate you sticking around. I appreciate you being available to answer this question. I've sent this to you ahead of time, so you know what we're asking. What's the answer?
The quick answer is no. No, you can't. So the issue lies in riparian rights. There's a big difference between the Great Lakes and a lake that there's riparian rights where the owners, the landowners, own a, if you want to imagine a circular lake, they all own a pie-shaped section that would go to the middle of the lake. They own the bottomlands. So that'd be trespass. And so you basically cannot. On an inland lake. Great Lakes, completely different. That has to do with the high water mark, public ownership of the bottomlands, but inland lakes are different, and you could not do it.
Okay, let's extend this to a river or a creek. And you say you're trout fishing or whatever. How does that all work?
Yeah, that's come up actually recently. People calling and talking about some trout fishing stuff. There's a lot more interest in trout fishing. So basically, if you access that river, the navigable water, if you access that from a point that you legally can do it, say it's a private landowner who lets you get in at their property or public land, you can get in, you can stay in the water. If you do come to a hazard, the law does allow you to exit at a 90-degree angle, go around that hazard or obstruction, a hole or a big log jam, re-enter at a 90-degree angle once you get around that hazard and stay in the water. And that is legal. You can't, a lot of people think I can go to a bridge abutment, a public road going over the creek, private on both sides, and just get off the bridge. That's not true. You'd have to access it somewhere where it's legal, whether private property or public.
So this is very interesting. So Great Lakes is different than an inland lake, which is different from a river.
Correct. Yep, that's correct. And navigable water and riparian rights, there's a lot of case law. And there's still stuff that's even in court right now. So it's kind of always changing. But those are the base laws that kind of were set way back when, and they've been followed.
Okay. So, you and I have talked about this before, is that it can get involved, it can get confusing, it can get convoluted, and it's really hard sometimes for outdoorsmen and women to keep track of all these things. And then you guys on the other end, as the people who enforce these, you're looking at it from a different angle as well. So it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, no pun intended, but the water gets muddy, and it definitely makes it difficult for everybody. So what we do is we look at intent. As officers, our job is to look at what was your intent. Did you know that you were doing wrong, and did you intend to do wrong? Okay, but did you just make a mistake? And that's where our officers use really good judgment. That's how we train them is to look at the facts of it and find out what this person was really intending to do before you take action. And our folks are really good at that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because there is, yes, intent. Like if you go out at night with a spotlight and a center fire rifle, your intent is probably to poach a deer. But if, on the other hand, you do something minor and you're out there otherwise in a legal manner, but you find some technicality, your intent was not to break the law. So I get that, and I appreciate that. And it also comes down to this. Listen, as the guy who is a son of a law enforcement officer, and as a guy who worked with a lot of VCOs over the years, and who was a VCO myself, look, there's got to be a little mutual respect, right? If you treat somebody in a certain way, you're going to get it treated back in the same way. If you show disrespect, you might get disrespect back. So there's a lot of factors at play here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're spot on with that one.
All right. Sarge, listen, I appreciate it. Thanks for your flexibility and joining me. Thanks for your availability and for sticking around for 2 segments this week. I do appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Love keeping people informed. So have a good day.
Yeah, Mike, we'll reach out to you again. Sergeant Mike Mshar of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Scott Ankerson, thank you for reaching out with that question for this week's Ask Avery segment. I appreciate that. And, of course, as always, a big thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. We'll take a break here for the top of the hour. When we come back in our third hour, we're going to head out on the water of Saginaw Bay to do a little early season trolling with Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters, senditcharters.com. He works out of the LInwood Beach Marina, LInwoodBeachMarina.com. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to our number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, and glad to have you along with us as we continue this transition into springtime. But you know what? As you are hearing this show, it is springtime on the calendar already, for sure. And Mother Nature is working that direction as well, right? And I realize this is gonna vary depending on where you are in our state. If you're listening to me in the middle of the UP and you still got snow on the ground, you say, Avery, it's crazy. Why are you talking about springtime? But here in the southern part of our state, or the central part of our state, it's spring. It feels like spring with everything that brings, right? It brings turkeys starting to strut. It brings red-winged blackbirds singing on the pond behind the house. It brings those big flying rats, also known as geese, sneaking into the yard. And it brings open water trolling. That's what it is on my book, right? I look at springtime like, okay, it's turkey season, and then it's trolling on Saginaw Bay for walleye. But I'm always late to that party because, well, for example, my son James was out there the other day, and they caught some beautiful fish, a bunch of fish and big fish. Here in Michigan, we are blessed with a lot of world-class fisheries and a large number of world-class captains who chase those fish. And because of the position I'm in here, I get a chance to talk to a lot of those people, become friends with a lot of those people, and use these people as resources. Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters is one of those guys. He works out of the LInwood Beach Marina, so we have that connection there as well. But I've gotten to know Jason over the last couple of years and have much respect for him. I call him the walleye technician. Now, he chases salmon as well later in the summer, but when it comes to walleye, or when it comes to trolling, this guy has it absolutely dialed in. He looks at it from a different perspective than I do. I go out there and I'm kind of haphazard. I'll throw some lures in the water and I'll pay, half attention to how deep they are, how far I'm running them back, and catch fish and call it good. But Jason looks at it as he's got a process, he's got a system, and he dials it in. And he's with us now, in fact, on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Cap, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. Listen, before we get started here on that, you were at the show in Grand Rapids last weekend. I had hoped to make it over for that. You were there doing some seminars. How did that go?
It was great. We had great attendance. The weather was good for all of us. We had a little snow on Sunday, a little rain here and there, which made the people not want to rake their yards and not pick up sticks. They want to go to the show and enjoy a day of talking about boating and fishing and getting their gear around for the spring fishing season.
And what were your topics, Jason? What were you talking about?
I was talking about Saginaw Bay walleye, and not necessarily trolling, but casting, jigging. I talked about all of it. Boat preparations, tackle, line size, line diameters, planer boards, offshore tackle. It was a great presence there at the show, and sold lots of boards and all the releases you need to have wore-out pads or flags are getting faded. You want to change your flags out. All the necessary equipment things coming out down the pipe and things you might have to look at as far as getting your boat, your gear, and everything ready to go for the spring season.
See, I always think of you as a troller. Talk to me more about this casting, or you said casting or what, jigging on the bay?
Well, both. So what part of my job here at the marina is selling products and letting the customers know how the products work. Garmin Live Scope, Humminbird Mega Live 2 was now out. And a lot of the tournament guys are going to a casting or jigging technique and actually forward-facing sonar on their boats to produce the fish they want for tournament-wise. Not necessarily quantity, but they catch the quality fish and pick out the fish they want out of a group and chase that one fish to get the 5 heaviest fish they have for their tournament bag. So forward-facing sonars turn the corner as far as technology. Everybody wants to see it, see how it works, so I would have both on my boat. I can actually go out and do casting trips. One thing you do is, it's kind of like your ice fishing. You can watch the fish come in, watch the fish react. But these casting trips, we're doing bass-type bait, sometimes jig bait, or jig heads with worms, jig heads with plastics, or a jerk bait type bait, and forward face out across the water and figure out where that fish is at and actually cast to the fish, just like the bass guys do.
No kidding. Now, do you give your clients the option? Do you talk to them ahead of time and say, look, do you want to do a standard trolling trip, or do you want to take it to the next level and cast for these fish?
I do to a certain extent. Most of my customers I get want to troll. They want to sit back, have some drinks, some sandwiches. A lot of parents with kids and grandkids, they just want to catch a bunch of fish. So we do a trolling trip where I can control the rod depths, the speeds, all that kind of stuff. Typically, I do a special type trip where I take 2 customers and we'll do a casting, but it's also a teaching. So my live scope's on a pole, not on my transducer on my trolling motor. It's actually on a pole, so I can actually put the spot lock on, face into the wind, turn the pole to the side, and then chase these fish off the side of the boat and show them the rock pile, show them how the fish are reacting, and have 2 separate Garmin screens, one in the back and one in the front. So everybody's looking at a live video screen just like you're playing a video game. But as far as trolling, most of my trips are trolling trips, don't get me wrong, and that's the kind of, to put numbers in the boat, 5-hour trips most of the time, and then just fill the box, and everybody wants it for table fare and something to eat and feed the family with.
Yeah, well, and I love to troll. I'm a troller, but man, you got my attention with this casting and jigging. Now, would that work this time of year? I mean, you got fish on the bay that are going to, some of them spawn in the bay, so I would think they would be easy to find on the rocks this time of year.
They are. In fact, I saw a couple reports from guys out using blade baits, your old silver buddies or sonar type baits, and ripping it off the bottom. They're doing the same thing as what I'm doing forward-facing sonar, but seeing the fish. It's just, seeing how the lake hasn't flipped over yet, the cold water is still on top, the warm water's on the bottom. The fish are actually, starting to hold to the bottom more, but a rip bait, kind of like your ice fishing, kind of like your jigging spoons, that kind of stuff, but a rip bait, a chatterbait, a rattle trap, things you can rip off the bottom, is also gets these fish attention, and it's kind of like a casting, but without ice. So it's a different presentation these fish have seen. The bass guys have done it for years. The walleye guys have taken over with it and being very successful. You can go out and put your boat on spot lock or troll around and find a pot of fish, cast into them, and rip that bait off the bottom. And it has a very extensive vibration when you rip it off the bottom, but the bait gets bit as it falls back down like a dying shad. Tell
me more about the bay flipping over.
So what happens is, you think about this when they learn when science class back in school was, I'll never use this information, but what happens is the lake will roll over. The warm water is currently on the bottom, and the cold water is on top, which makes the lake freeze over. And the geothermal of the Earth's temperature is 55 degrees, basically your bottom temperature, give or take. That's all the geothermal. The dirt always stays the warmest because of the Earth's core. What will happen is the water starts to get warmer and get warmer. This lake will roll over. And all of a sudden, now the warmer water is on the surface, and the cold water goes to the bottom. Just the opposite in the summertime. These fish will start suspending, because I look at it this way. It's like they get in the shower. If the water's too hot, the water's cold, you get out. Well, the fish do the same thing. These fish will get that mid-column. They'll come up and sun themselves because the surface temperature is actually warmer than the bottom. It's 55 degrees. We start getting these nice sunny days. The sun's out, there's no clouds. These big females will start to suspend and get their eggs matured and get ready to spawn. So the fish will be off the bottom. The next thing about that is, my detail is, a fish that's off the bottom, is suspending, is easier to catch than a fish off the bottom.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's. I've always looked at it that way. If you've got a fish that's suspended, he's suspended because he's feeding. But then you'll get somebody like our mutual friend, Mr. Anglerquest, Brad Dupuis, who all summer long targets those ones laying down there in the mud, and he gets those fish to bite too. So I guess two different schools of thought, huh?
Absolutely, yes. And as long as the fish are biting, it doesn't matter. But I have found that the fish that are suspended are easier, more active and easier to catch than the ones on the bottom.
We are pre-spawn right now. Do you have a feel, Jason, for what our makeup is on the bay now, of how many fish are running the river to spawn versus how many are actually spawning out in the bay? Do we have a significant population of bay spawners now?
We do, and it's the difference of they've actually had a breed of fish that come in will actually do their spawn on the shoals, on the gravel bottoms. The downfall is going to be is where their lake level is getting lower and lower and lower. Those fish are getting deeper and deeper because of the shallow water. We're actually dredging here in LInwood right now because the channel is pretty shallow. And if I look up the channel, there's shoreline that's a couple hundred feet off the shore of the sand showing. So the area is changing where these fish are going to spawn just because the lake levels are down right now, probably 3 foot from 5-6 years ago.
Oh, that much,
but
huh?
As far as the percentage, what spawns in the river, which ones don't, I don't have those numbers. I'm not a scientist by trade by no means. I'm a fisherman. That's what I do. But trying to have a percentage, I do not know that number. No.
Yeah, but just the fact that they are spawning out there, I think, is significant. It's also significant that you tell me that the water level is down so much.
Yeah. Yep. So one of the things I learned in my captain's class years ago was we have a 19-year cycle of basically a tide. And what will happen is on year number 1, you're going to have the highest watermark you harp. As you go down 5, 6, 7 years, you're going to get the lowest watermark. And after 10, 11 years, keep it start going up. We'll go back to that 19-year cycle again where the water was highest. Keep in mind, I think we're 7 years on the way down right now, so we've got a year or 2 more to go before that water tide will start going back up, and we'll have high water again here another 11 or 12 years like we had here 5, 6 years ago.
Hang tight, Jason. We're talking with Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters, senditcharters.com. He works out of the LInwood Beach Marina, LInwoodBeachMarina.com, about springtime walleye fishing on Saginaw Bay. Why fish the bay? Make the drive down to Erie. Well, I don't think, we'll talk to Jason about that coming up after the break. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City, WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. And this is the time of year when you'll see the Reader crews getting out there and helping people out. Look, you could do your springtime cleanup, right? You could do it. I could do mine. I am physically able to do it. But the way I look at it is every hour that the folks from Reader are there is actually an hour less. Probably, this is a better way to look at it. If they bring in a crew of 4 people, all right, every hour that they are there is like 4 hours that they have saved me that I can be doing other things. I could be out fishing. I could be out turkey hunting, whatever. I'd be out shed hunting. So I think it's a great option. And get in touch with them, readerlandscaping.com, readerlandscaping.com. Set up your projects you want to get done for the summertime and your maintenance schedule as well. And before you know it, it's going to be time to open the sprinkler systems too. So check them out online, readerlandscaping.com, readerlandscaping.com. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Then jump on over to senditcharters.com, senditcharters.com, the website for Captain Jason Graham. He works out of LInwood Beach Marina, their website, LInwoodBeachMarina.com. Jason, do you go up in the Saginaw River at all and run trips, or you stay right out in the bay this time of year?
I stay out in the bay. You can go up on the rivers and catch a few fish. You're chasing more fish. I have found that the trolling aspect, what I do is more, how do I word this, I guess. It's more user-friendly for me. Because once you get in the river system, now I'm trying to teach people to jig and try to get that rod technique exactly right. We can do, if that's what you want to do. But trying to keep 4 or 5 rods in the water and keep everybody's jig technique, it's very difficult for everybody to catch their fish. If we're trolling wise, I've got the presentation down. We're catching fish hand over fist, and it's a much enjoyable experience for somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience fishing, per se. Why
fish Saginaw Bay for walleye this time of year as opposed to heading down to Lake Erie? I mean, Erie's got more fish and bigger fish, don't they?
Sometimes they do, but right now these pre-spawn fish are set up just like the fish in Lake Erie going up the Maumee River. We have the same situation where these fish are all ganged in. We have fish coming from Wisconsin. There's actually been a couple of fish tagged from Cleveland, Ohio that were caught in the spring here in Saginaw Bay. One was caught through the ice this winter that had a Cleveland, Ohio tag on it. A couple of years ago, one had a Green Bay, Wisconsin tag on it in the springtime this year. So these fish come from different areas. We do have some bigger fish or good-sized fish. An 8, 10-pounder are common. Trying to catch that 12 or 14 is not quite as easy, whereas Lake Erie is. But we still have a lot of quality trophy fish in the system right now for that spring spawn for sure.
8 to 10-pound fish, Jason. I mean, honestly, that's a true trophy anywhere else in the country.
Absolutely.
All right, so we've established you are primarily a troller. In fact, I've had you on the Offshore Tackle podcast before to talk about your trolling experiences. But how do you target these fish in the springtime? Where do you find them, and how do you fish for them?
The first thing I think about is the water temperature. Keep in mind, these fish want to spawn around that 42-degree mark. That's typically where a walleye wants to spawn, give or take a few degrees, of course. So when this bay gets the ice off of it, we're getting warmer. We're starting to get in the mid-30s, towards 40. These fish are ganging up around the river mouths, tributaries. Au Gray has a few fish. The Pine River has a few fish. Saginaw River has a few fish, all ganging up at the mouth of those waters, waiting for that water temperature just to get right so they can shoot up the river and do their thing. Sometimes it'll take them 4 or 5 days for the journey, how far they want to go. Some fish go up the Flint River and fish that far up, they'll go. But I try to figure out the water temperature first, and based on how I do my seminars in the spring, when I promote is 32 to 45 degrees. That's a good 1 mile an hour to 1.5 mile an hour trolling speed and big baits. They want a big meal. I talk to customers, and when I present in my seminars is, think about in the wintertime when we're sitting on a couch, the weather's cold, it's snotty out, we don't want to go outside, we get lethargic, and so do the fish. Once we get these warm spring days, these fish want to get more active, just like we do. We'll go pick up sticks, start thinking about getting the lawnmower around, stuff like that. We're not real active, but we're starting to move around some more. And in the summertime, we're real active. We've got ball games. We all got soccer practice and baseball and softball, all kinds of things going on in the summertime. We got a lot of things going on. The fish do the same thing. So this time of year, it's cold, big baits, slow presentation, and And as spring goes on and these fish go into post spawn, I will drop down my bait size to a number 9 size, number 9 centimeter flicker minnow number 9, a bandit bee shad, a larger flicker shad, and start pulling a little faster as these fish come up with post spawn and start moving into the deeper waters.
You know, I used to think, and I hear what you're saying now, but I used to think, well, I would think, you know, in cold water, fish are more lethargic. They're looking for a smaller bait, but they actually want the big baits this time of year, right?
Correct. Yeah, you can catch them on small baits. I heard a report the other day, some guys are catching them on flicker number 9s. But also keep in mind, if the shad in the area of that size, it's match the hatch.
Yeah.
So all the book work, all the seminars you read, the videos you watch, it goes out the window based on if the minnows are all a 9-inch flicker minnow size, that's the size bait you want to run. Just your boat speed will dictate how they want it, fast, slow. Typically when the water's cold like this, the lethargy is not moving very fast, and so you don't want the bait moving very fast either.
So you're trolling slow this time. Are you using a bow mount electric or kicker or what?
I use both. What I try to do is when I'm going 1 to 1.5 miles per hour, I have my bow mount electric in the water, autopilot set, and I use that the whole time. Once I hit 1.5, I have found that my batteries don't last nearly as long, and if by chance I have to run 2 trips a day, I can't run the battery juice out in the morning and not be able to go out in the afternoon. So once I hit 1.5 to 2 miles an hour, I have the kicker in the water the rest of the season until it starts cooling down again. Till the fall, November, December, where I'll slow back down again in less than 1.5 miles an hour. But anything over 1.5, I tend to run my kicker instead of my trolling motor.
You mentioned batteries. I think of you also as a master boat rigger. These new style batteries, are they the real deal?
Absolutely. Lithium batteries are the new thing, the new era. Everybody's talking about them. Everybody's asking about them. A lot of things can play into that. You know, how fast you want to go, how long you're trying to fish. Are you tournament fishing? Are you just a fun fisherman? Electric motors, electronics, these new lithium batteries are going to be the new across-the-board standards I see. I would assume the price is coming down on them. The warranties are outstanding. I run a battery called Powerhouse in my boat right now with a 15-year warranty on them.
How long?
So any issues in the first 15 years.
Wow. And the cost on forward-facing sonar is starting to come down now too, isn't it?
It's starting to, yes. Well, I don't know if it's coming down or the fact is there's a new generation coming out. That's what I see happening.
Okay.
Because when forward-facing come out with Garmin, they had an LVS 32, which is the first era of the live scope coming out. That was out about a year and a half. Then they come out to LVS 34, which is more powerful. So now the 34 is starting to come down in price. I see there's something new in the pipe coming down it's actually going to be new, more advanced, maybe the same price range, but actually more technology and be able to see further with forward-facing sonar in the future.
I'm fascinated by forward-facing sonar, but let's go back to the basics of what your setup looks like this time of year. Like, how many baits are you running? How many boards are you running, Jason?
I am running 3 rods per person, including myself. So if I have 4 customers and myself, I run 15 rods. I run a board on every single rod. And for the fact is, my customers love the tattle flags. They can tell, even though they've never been on a boat before, if that flag goes down, they know there's a fish on it. So I run 7 or 8 boards a side, depending on how many customers I have on board, and all the rods are in the water.
How do you do that without tangling?
Well, keep in mind, I run braided line versus mono. And one thing that does is it's about 25% less line in the water. So if you have less line in the water behind each board, you have less chance of tangling or a fish. By chance a fish gets hooked up, he has more room to play around behind the board. The other thing I do is I trip that front release on every fish catch unless it's right next to the boat. So the second rod, the third rod, the 7th rod, I will take my rod, I will reel down and point the rod right at the board. I will put my thumb on the spool, and I will bang the handle to put vibration through the line. It'll trip that board every time. I don't use a hook set type or a jerky motion. I'll actually reel down, point the line at it, because braid has 0 stretch. So I can actually point the rod at it, bang the handle. One new thing is you're going to bang the free handle. Don't have it shoved in your gut, because all you're going to do is bruise your gut. But if you have it out in the open and you bang the handle, that vibration gives it just enough slack and pull to trip the board, and that board will start floating back into your prop wash area. As it starts going back in the prop wash area, just a steady reel. If you reel real fast, what happens with my customers is you reel real fast, you got to take a break. No different than going for a sprint. You run to the mailbox and you run out of breath. Well, if you reel real fast because you want to get the fish in the boat thinking it's going to help, it's actually the worst thing to do. A nice steady retrieve and don't stop until the captain says so. You're going to take the board off, keep reeling, net the fish. These fish give up so easy. They're usually they open their mouths, they come to the surface, and it's typically when the fish falls off is because the customers will see the fish on top. Either they reel it too fast and start skipping it, and they run out of breath, and if they pause, or the slop of the weight or the looseness of the fish will have the fish fall off because their mouth's like a crappie. They're real thin paper on the sides, and if that hook pulls in it and cuts a slot through it, there's not the barb. No matter how big the barb is, it's still going to fall off because the hole is so big in the side of their mouth.
And don't pump the board in like you're fishing salmon.
Correct. Do not pump the board. That's the very first thing you're going to lose a fish with is pumping the board because the board acts like a parachute. So you might have a little slack between the rod tip and the board, but there's a lot more slack between the board and the bait and the fish.
Do you run your long leads on the outside or inside?
My longest rods are always on the inside because they're going to be the deepest rod. So my shallow rods will be on the farthest out. If I'm setting up, let's say I want to try to figure out where these fish are. They want to bite the bait either 10 foot down, 12 foot down, 15 foot round. I will set out a 50 foot back, a 60 foot back, a 70 foot back, and let the fish dictate where they want to bite. Once I get that figured out, I'll put all my lines to that same depth if I have to make all the rods go. But typically my outside boards are my shallowest, and when you get that fish hooked up, he comes to the surface and goes top of all the inside boards towards the boat because your rods are deeper.
In theory. Right? I always, when it comes to trolling multiple lines, I always say in theory. Yep. That's the way it should work.
In theory. Typically what happens, and here's what happens is, if the fish stays on, typically that fish comes to the surface, he gives up, and you reel the fish across all the lines. But if people can't tell if the fish fell on or off now that deep diving crankbait will dive all the way to the boat and tangle every single rod on the way in, because the diver of the bait itself wants to dive deep if there's no pressure behind it. The fish make it come to the surface. If there's no fish on it, it wants to dive deep, and will tangle all the rods in the way in. So the best thing is just hold the rod tight and let it get behind the boat further before you start reeling. If you're not sure if there's fish on it or not, let it go behind the boat further and reel it up the prop wash. Then you won't tangle them.
Jason, I would encourage people to, if they're interested in a springtime or summertime trip on Saginaw Bay, to get in touch with you. The website, senditcharters.com. Also, LInwood Beach Marina. The docks are in the water, LInwoodBeachMarina.com. Always a pleasure, Cap. You and I will be talking again soon, all right?
Great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Hey, Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters. SendItCharters.com at the LInwood Beach Marina, LInwoodBeachMarina.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. A few more things to talk about. Then we'll come back and wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Muskegon on WKBZ. That's 1090 AM. You can hear us in Tawas, WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. Twice each weekend, in fact. And you can also hear us twice each weekend in Saginaw on WSGW, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. You know what I call that this corner of the building for these 3 hours, right? It's the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. And I listen, I got a sign behind me that proves it, and I have the buy-in of Charlie Root. Charlie, runs this place, okay? He is, second in command, and he runs this place. And he said, Avery, you can call it the Outdoor Magazine studio for those 3 hours. He said, but don't extend it to 3.5. He said, if you get to 3.5 and you call it the Outdoor Magazine studio, he said, we're going to shut you down. So I'm in very tight time constraints here, and where it is the Outdoor Magazine studio. Charlie, appreciate your help. Again, crowds out there going, Charlie. Young Jonathan Dent cannot wait for the day when he has enough experience behind him when people will stay out there and yell, Jonathan. But they're not. They're not, Charlie. They're not. Only you right now are at that high of a level. Just you, Charlie Root. The man himself. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Hammond Drives and Equipment. Are you a farmer, a contractor, a landscaper, maintenance supervisor, anybody who needs hydraulic hoses and fittings? Hammond Drives can help you out. With more than 30 years in business, the warehouse full of fittings, elbows, adapters for air, water, chemical, petroleum, hydraulic. They can help you out. They're in Freeland. They do business across the state, though. Stop by their showroom on M47. just north of town, or go to the website, hammondeqp.com, or give them a call at 989-695-2239. I don't like to give out phone numbers, but I'm going to give this one again. And the reason I don't like to give out phone numbers over the air is people tend to forget them. 989-695-2239 to get in touch with the folks at Hammond Drives and Equipment. Now, having said I don't like phone numbers, I'm going to give you another one. This is for the Wednesday Night Live at the Lumberjack Restaurant in West Branch coming up Wednesday, April 23rd. 989-343-0892. 989-343-0892. If you would like to reserve a spot at our Wednesday Night Live at the Lumberjack Restaurant, the Forward Corporation Lumberjack Restaurant in beautiful West Branch for Wednesday night, April 23rd, 989-343-0892. Website is now open. Registration is now open for the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing to benefit MUCC's Youth Camp. Go to mucc.org/golf, mucc.org/golf. As long as we're talking about housekeeping items every Wednesday night now through the Lent season. On Wednesday Night Live, we are giving away a Michigan brand ham for the holidays during this Lenten season. Nick Grillo of Michigan brand is on with me each week watching the people who are entering to win that contest. He picks a winner every week, and he sends that ham out to you as quickly as possible. It's another example of the generosity of Michigan brand meats. Love working with those guys. Just great people and hardcore outdoorsmen, too. Also, during this Lenten season, as we work our way into that Wednesday Night Live, we're giving away a $25 gift certificate to the Lumberjack Restaurant. You can use it during Wednesday Night Live or sometime in the future if you want. Again, but to get in on that, you have to watch Wednesday Night Live every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. That's on my Facebook page, on my YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, also on X. It's not on Instagram, because Instagram requires us to jump through some hoops, and I'm not willing to do that. Speaking of jumping through hoops, I think I finally got my paperwork done to renew my charter captain's license. Fortunately, the renewal process is not as big a deal as getting the license in the first place. But so we're taking care of that. What else am I doing here? I'm looking at my list here. Rod restrictions. Thank you for reminding myself, Avery. I had originally hoped to have that be the topic of discussion or conversation in this week's Ask Avery segment. In fact, last week I promised you it would be. This whole issue is more involved than what I thought it would have become. The concept of changing the number of rods a Great Lakes trolling angler can use has now been tied into a couple of other issues, including a boat license that would allow you to buy a license to run more rods, which has also been tied into another fundraising piece of potential legislation. So that's why I don't have an update for you on that. I have been in contact with the people who are spearheading this now in Lansing, and it looks like here in the next couple of weeks we can kind of announce where that's at. But that's why I'm holding off on that one, because for the last few weeks, any information I give you would have become dated very soon, and I don't want to give you bad information. Speaking of information, you remember last week I told you that the DNR had, that people in the UP had found a couple of cougar cubs, mountain lion cubs. Well, we did get confirmation that is indeed what they are. If you go back, if you listen to the podcast, the second and third segment of the opening hour, we talk more about that with DNR wildlife biologist Brian Roell. All right, we'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I have no idea what he's cooking up. I suspect, I bet it'll be fish. What kind of fish? I don't know. What recipe? I don't know, but I can tell you this. It will be a good one. My name's Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Love to hear from you. Send me an email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. So glad and thankful for so many things, including the people that I've had a chance to work with over the years. And that list has to include wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine concept. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Chef, welcome back. How are you?
Really good, Michael, and yourself?
Good. What category of recipe do you have for us today?
We have a rabbit recipe since our rabbit season is coming to a close for actually small.
Here's a different perspective, an interesting perspective that Charlie Rude just brought up. He said, do you think, Dixie Dave, that it is appropriate to cook a rabbit recipe when the Easter Bunny is just around the corner?
We always used to sell rabbit at the restaurant for Easter. It was kind of my thing, you know. We did it for about 30 years.
Well, let's hear you cook up the Easter Bunny for us this week, David.
Okay, it's page 148 in the cookbook. You need a couple of rabbits, maybe even up to 3, depending on their size. You want to cut them in 8 to 10 pieces each. You need a couple of cups of apple cider, maybe 2 to 3, a small jar of apple jelly, a couple ounces of cinnamon schnapps, hot damn schnapps, and a couple of cinnamon sticks, or up to a quarter of a teaspoon of powdered cinnamon, a small onion diced fine. Better than bouillon, you could use either chicken or beef, whichever you prefer. I would prefer beef for this recipe. A couple ounces of heavy cream, flour to dredge and to make some roux, a little bit of olive oil to saute with, and a dash of white pepper. So what you're going to do is sprinkle the white pepper all over the rabbit pieces and then dredge it in flour. You could actually use coarse pepper if you wanted to grate pepper over it, which Mike, I'm sure, would.
Oh, yeah.
And then you dredge it in the flour, brown it on all sides in a small amount of oil, and place the pieces in a casserole. When you're done browning, you're going to have to do it in small batches. Most people wouldn't have a large enough saute pan to do it all in one time. So after you get it done, slowly saute the onions for 2 to 3 minutes, and then you can add the rabbit meat to a casserole, and then deglaze the pan with schnapps. Be careful because it's got a lot of sugar in it, and it might flare up pretty good. So be careful. So, and then you want to stir the bottom of the pan to lift up all the brown bits that stick down. It's kind of called deglazing. And then in a smaller saute pan, or you can use the same one, heat up the cider, and when boiling, add some of the jelly, enough to make the flavor that you're looking for, the apple flavor, you know, apple cider or apple jelly. So you can add the cinnamon schnapps also to that, and then so you want to make about a cup of roux. So you're going to add the beef base, the bouillon, better than bouillon, to that, and then so you want to make about a cup of roux, which would be either melted butter or some oil and flour mixture, and it's a great thickening agent. Or you can use cornstarch, whichever you prefer. With a wire whisk, whip it in very well so that all the lumps are dissolved, and make sure you melt down the cornstarch real good so that there's not lumps of it like little biscuits cooking in there. So when you can test the flavor right now, make sure that it's to your flavor profile that you're looking for, and the thickness is just right. Now you want to add the heavy cream, mix it real good, and pour the mixture over the meat in the casserole. Cover it up and bake it covered 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on the age of the rabbits, at 350 degrees. And I would say you could serve this with noodles or fluffy rice, would be just great. And this is a great way to use some of our rabbits. And I've made this actual recipe with squirrel for home use, and it come out real good.
What else? It sounds wonderful. What else, Dave, do you think you could use this with?
I would say duck breast or goose breast would come out just great, because you're going to cook it for a long time. And so, you know, either duck or goose, you want to eat it pretty rare. But if you're going to simmer it like this, it would get, you know, tender again, and you could use that. It would be great. I would say even grouse. I've never made it with grouse, but I bet you it would work good.
Why rare on the goose or duck breast? Why is that?
Well, what happens when you overcook it, it turns real like leather-like or actually liver-like to me. And you want it to be nice and rare to medium rare, no more. The more you cook it, the tougher it's going to get until it gets to a certain point, and then it gets tender again.
Yeah, let's not make it like liver, okay?
I know. Right. Well, it does. It's exactly what happens.
David, always a pleasure. This is on page 148 of the cookbook. I will post this recipe on the Facebook page, and I'll look forward to talking with you next week, buddy.
All righty. Yep. Thanks a lot. Everybody have a wonderful Easter.
Why? Well, yeah, that's coming up here about a month away. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. I can't believe, Charlie, he cooked up the Easter bunny. I wouldn't have thought of that had you not brought it up, which really shows the type of person that you, the way your mind thinks, Charlie. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Love to hear from you. Let me know what's on your mind, what you like, what you don't like. Send me your pictures. Love to see your pictures, especially kids in the outdoors. The show is called Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery, and I will talk with you next time on this show called Outdoor Magazine.